Hi, welcome to the Shepherd's Rest Doc Talk. This is episode 74B.
I'm Cam, this is Julie.
Yes, this is the Haftarah discussion of this week's Torah portion, and it is the book of Obadiah. Now, if you look it up online, and actually we posted this, it would be Hosea, some earlier chapters than we did last week. Mm-hmm. But there's also groups that do Obadiah.
Yeah, they go together.
Yes. Obadiah's message is to the kingdom of Edom. And I love how it is the kingdom of Edom because it transcends the physical.
Okay.
And that's what we're really going to talk about this week, is how it is, the Lord is using physical prophecies to come about to show us a much bigger reality. Before we dive into the book of Obadiah, we're going to talk about who Edom was.
Okay.
All right, so back in Genesis, we remember the story with Jacob and Esau when Esau was out hunting and he comes in and he says, "Oh, I'm famished. Please give me some of that red stew," right? Yeah. That's what he asked for, the red stew. From that moment on, he had the nickname of Edom. Because Adam is the Hebrew word for red, and Edom is just kind of a variation of Adam, really. Right. So that's where the term Edom comes from. Now, the Edomites, we know from Deuteronomy 2:5, the Lord says, "I gave Edom their land." Right. Mount Seir is that land. Right. And it stretches from the tip of the Dead Sea to the tip of the Red Sea, and everything in between that line, and then the mountain ridge on the east and the wilderness on the west. And interestingly, when Israel left Egypt and they were ready to go into the land, who was it that said, "No, I'm sorry, you can't pass through our land"? It was the Edomites. They wanted to go along the trade routes, the King's Highway, and Edom said no. And the Lord said, "Don't fight with them because that's your brother."
Right.
They're brothers. That's one thing you really need to remember as we go through this, because I'm going to take you on a little spiritual journey to now. But you have to understand that Isaac, who represents Yeshua, had Jacob and Esau.
Right.
This is a family
That's
conflict.
That's why it comes from your midst.
That's right. And Esau is Jacob's brother.
Right.
So all through this, you see I would propose that the physical representation is Jacob and Esau, but a spiritual representation is the spirit and the flesh.
Yeah, and you can go all the way back to Cain and Abel.
Okay.
I mean, you have that same conflict.
Yes.
It's just the spirit of that conflict coming all the way through.
Right. I wasn't sure where that was going.
Yeah.
I was like, land-wise? Or no, but
yeah,
you're right.
But
you're right,
aspect.
The spiritual aspect of that.
And just to add on, when Israel left, when they just left Egypt, the first one to attack them was Amalek. Amalek is the son of Esau. Well, and that's also why, not Abimelech, but Amalek. The reason why Amalek is considered the spirit of Antichrist is because he is from Esau, which is where that comes from.
And the Antichrist will come from the midst.
Right.
He's not going to be some foreign...
Right.
He's going to be from the family, from God's people.
Which is
from
why
among his people.
Right. That's why they give him the credit of being.
A lot of people fall for it.
Right.
All right, now I want to go to Genesis 27:40. This is a prophecy that the Lord gave to Esau through Isaac. Okay. So it's one of the blessings that Isaac gave. It says, "And your brother," which is Jacob, "you shall serve, but it shall come about when you become restless that you will break his yoke from your neck." So just a little history. David subdued the Edomites and took control of all those trade routes. Okay. And Solomon expanded it even more. He built a port down on the Red Sea. And it wasn't until King Jehoshaphat's reign that the Edomites joined against Judah. And then the next king, who was King Jehoram, that is when a full rebellion happened, and then they took all of that back. Okay. And so from that moment up until the Babylonian captivity, it was constant back and forth. If Israel was doing what they were supposed to do, they would take control of the land and the trade routes. When they weren't doing what they were supposed to do, Esau would rise up, and he would become the head and take over that land, which controlled the trade routes. That's a very important part of this. That's where the King's Highway was, and all those trade routes were the that were coming up through the Red Sea. So that's why that area of land was so detrimental to be controlled.
I mean, Israel really is the center of things.
It really
Without
is.
The Africa and Asia and Europe, they don't mix.
So you can see why Israel was supposed to be a light. So as these people traveled through going up here, they would say,
picking it up.
These people, they're so generous, and they're so
the God they
prosperous.
serve. Yeah, we like
the gods they serve is a mighty God. You know, all of these things. And when they would represent him correctly, that worked. And they got to control all those trade routes. Mm-hmm. When it didn't, other nations would come and control them.
Yeah.
All right, and like I said, this just went back and forth until the 3rd century, when the Nabateans conquered and displaced the Edomites from their physical location. So they had no more home. Exactly what happened to the northern kingdom happened to the Edomites through the Nabateans.
Do you know where they're from?
The Nabateans?
Yeah.
Well, they were just on the other side of the Sea of Galilee, because remember, that's where King Herod Antipas's wife came from, from the Nabateans, and they were a great, powerful people. So they displaced in the 3rd century, they displaced the Edomites, and the Edomites fled to the southern lowlands of, so they were way up high on these mountains, and then they had to flee to the southern lowlands of Judea. But in the 2nd century, the Maccabean kings subdued even those people who had fled, and guess what they did? They forced them to convert to Judaism, to assimilate, and they dispersed them throughout. So now this is where I think this whole prophecy of Obadiah really comes into play.
Yeah.
Because now what you have within God's family is the spirit of both. The spirit of Israel and the spirit of Esau.
Yes.
Working, because now King Herod, who tried to kill the Messiah, was one of these converts.
Yeah,
so now what you have...
And he married a Jewish woman.
Right.
Like, just because he wanted to show, well, wait, I can be king of the Jews. So not only had he converted, he also married.
He tried to take over. He tried to usurp the blessing. Right?
Yeah.
All right. Now, so interestingly, the Jews now believe that Edom is symbolic for Rome. So back in the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd, that was symbolic for Rome. So Rome became Edom because they oppressed them and they took them captive. They did all the things that they acted like the Edomites, right? Well, now remember, we've got them all mixed in now, right?
Right. So you got the tares and the wheat together.
Yes. And I see that in one of the verses in here that we'll talk about in a minute. But so they see that as Rome. But what came out of Rome was Christianity. So what did the Roman Catholic Church do? They took them captive. They forced them to convert. They made
acted
them
like Edom.
They acted like the Edomites. They acted like Esau. So I see the same thing working now. We have the spirit of Esau and the spirit of Jacob among God's people.
Yeah.
You have those who are wanting the heritage, wanting go back to the roots, wanting the promises of Abraham, the promises to Israel, binding ourselves to them.
I want to look like a son of Abraham.
And then you have those that could care less about the heritage, could care less about the covenant, could care less about just want the blessing. Amen to that.
Wow. Yeah.
All right. Now, on that note, let's dive into Obadiah and see just how this really fits in to today. All right, well, let's just start in verse 1. It says, the vision of Obadiah. This is what the Master Yahweh said concerning Edom. We have heard a report from Yahweh, and a messenger has been sent among the nations, saying, arise and let us rise up against her for battle. Okay, this is why I don't see this has happened yet. Now, there was a taste of it, but the Nabateans were the only ones that displaced them. Okay? This says that he's going to send word to all the nations to come against her. Okay, so we know it's a her. So I would say this is spiritual. Okay. This is a spiritual
because he goes with the women at the end.
Yes. Now in 3, we see why he is so, well, we kind of see what started it, the root of the cause. The reason is going to be found in 9 through 13, where it talks about in the day of Israel's distress, or in the southern kingdom, when they were displaced, when they were conquered by the Babylonians, they actually helped the Babylonians. They cut off the routes. They wouldn't, like the trading routes, they wouldn't allow them to pass. They would capture them for the Babylonians. They were and they laughed. They went to the Temple Mount and drank in honor of their captivity. We'll see that in a little while. But we see that the root of this is found in 3, where it says, the pride of your heart has deceived you, you who dwell in the clefts of the rock, whose dwelling place is high, who say in your heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Yeah. We see that first with Hasatan, right? We see that he first, in the very beginning, he's the one that said in his heart, I will put my throne above yours, is basically what he says. I will become more powerful than you. And we also see that in the end with the church of Laodicea. You say in your heart, I am rich. I am made great. I have it all together. I don't need anything. It's the same spirit.
It's a deceit.
Yes.
Deceiving yourself. And First John talks about, you say this, but you deceive yourself. There's constant understanding of, guys, you deceive yourself. Jeremiah talks about that too, which fits perfect since he lines up with Jeremiah. Because Jeremiah is saying that.
Yes, and that's why it's so important what we have written on our hearts.
Right.
Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And you're going to go in the way of your heart.
Yeah.
So if you despise your heritage and you despise the covenant, you're not going to walk in his ways.
Right.
And you're going to deceive yourself. You're going to be like the Laodicea church. And we don't want to be like that. We don't want to be hot and cold, which mixes.
Right.
Which we're going to see that comes in the next verse, in 4. It says, though you rise high as the eagle, and though you set your nest among the stars, from there I shall bring you down, declares Yahweh. I see 2 things here. I see, though you fly high like the eagle, so you're just high and mighty with everybody else in the world. You're just up there with everybody else, rubbing elbows. I'm this great, I'm up there with everybody else. And it says you set your nest among the stars. That's spiritual. So you're among the spiritual people, because he says the righteous shine like the stars, right? And we know the nests that are up in the mustard seed church from kingdom.
Matthew 13.
Not church. The mustard seed tree, that kingdom, says the kingdom of heaven is like, and then you have all these birds perching in their nests high up in the tree. We know that from earlier in 13 that the birds are false doctrines.
Right.
It's not a good thing. It's bad. So these are the false doctrine, and the people who carry those false doctrines. That is the spirit of Esau.
Yes.
And they're nesting among the stars, which are the righteous. So you have the wheat and the tares. Remember what I said about you? I said, yes, I see that in here. The wheat and the tares, they grow together until the end.
And what's interesting is, Isaac is promised, when he's given the promise to Abraham, you will be as numerous as the stars of heaven.
Yes.
Jacob is not told that. Jacob is told you will be as the dust of the earth.
Right, because the dust of the earth represents the physical.
Right.
The stars of the heaven represents the spiritual.
And so here you have Esau saying, I don't want that. I'm going to, just like this, so it'd be the spirit of Hasatan. Forget this. I'm going to go for the heavenly part, because then I can get the earthly part.
And that's what you see the Edomites doing here. Is they're not satisfied with the physical. I want your spiritual blessing too.
Yet Abraham has both
physical and
the stars
spiritual,
and the dust of the earth.
Because we are children of Abraham spread everywhere, right? But we're also spiritual Israel.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's how we're the stars.
Yeah.
Yes. Love it. All right, so let's jump to 6. This was very exciting. All right, so 6 is where, you know how I am. I'm like, where are we at on this timeline?
Right, yeah.
I think we're right at verse 6. And here's what 6 says. How Esau shall be searched out. His hidden treasures shall be sought out. That is what I see happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've had all of the false doctrine nests, that have just permeated through the entire tree, right? But here you have people all over the world that I feel like this, in 1, it says, I've sent out to the entire world, arise and be against Esau. Mm-hmm. Well, what's happening? We're rising up and we're searching out all of Edom's treasures and going, wait a minute, we've been duped.
Yes.
We've been lied to.
Right.
This isn't right. So we've been searching it out, and we've we've plundered it, basically.
Yeah.
Is exactly what it says in
Small
verse
little
5.
pockets of it, absolutely.
It talks about the plundering of it because we've searched all the treasures and realized this isn't it.
Right.
So now we're trying to get back to the land, and who is stopping us? Who's trying to keep us from going
Esau.
in? The Edomites.
Yeah.
The spirit of Esau will not allow the truth to go forth.
Right.
To bring us to the land.
Because
it eventually
it knows
will.
it's going to completely remove it. You know why? Because then Obadiah will happen.
That's right.
And they're out there.
Obadiah will happen. And that's what I saw. I was like, oh, this is where we're at.
Yeah.
We're searching it out. We are finding all the false doctrines. We're turning around. We're trying to get into the land. And just like physical Israel, that's fine. That's fine. We'll just go around. It would be easier to go on this
on
this
highway,
but that's okay. We don't mind. We'll go around. We'll get into the land, and He will be faithful to bring us there.
I just saw an hourglass. You know the hourglass?
Yes.
Like it can only be one side up, right?
Right.
So it has now flipped.
Yes.
And putting Israel on top, and as the sand's going down, it's the actual process of getting all the Edomite out, so that then Israel will be clear and just Israel.
And then when we go on, like I said, we see 9 through 14 is all about the fall of the southern kingdom. It's all about that physical fall of the southern kingdom. And then it goes into 15. For the day of Yahweh is near upon all the nations. Okay, well, that's now.
Right.
Because that was not back then. It's now.
Again, it's that cycle. It's gone through.
Yes.
It's gone. I mean, it went through when they wouldn't let them pass to go from Egypt to the land.
Right.
It went through with this destruction. It'll go through again. Right.
And we see a big shift from 14 to 15 of past and future. And that's where Obadiah is sitting. He is sitting after the exile, talking about the past and looking forward to the future. Yes. And it says, for the day of Yahweh is near upon all the nations, as you have done. It shall be done to you. Your reward shall come back on your own head. It's measure for measure.
Yeah.
So let's think about that on spiritual terms. You had spiritual groups throughout history who killed the Jews, who forced them to convert, who did all of the things that the spirit of Esau, the Edomites did, and then in the end, he's going to do the same thing to them.
Right.
And I thought that was really kind of telling and interesting.
Yeah.
So when you go into 17, here's a clue why you know this is the very end. It says, for on Mount Zion there shall be an escape, and they shall be set apart, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possession. You see this same prophecy in Isaiah 4, 2 and 3, Joel 2, 32, and Revelation 14:1. And in Revelation 14:1, it's the 144,000.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but it's the same exact prophecy. So we know this is the end because those are the ones that escape. It's the remnant idea.
Always dealing with the remnant.
Yes, it's the remnant idea. And it says something in 18 I thought was interesting. I want to throw this out. Do it whatever you want. Another midrash. And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, but the house of Esau for stubble. And they shall burn among them, and they shall consume them, so that no survivor is left of the house of Esau, for Yahweh has spoken. So we have the house of Jacob and the house of Joseph, but Joseph was part of Jacob, right? So in my opinion, you have physical and spiritual working here. You have physical Israel, who's in the land right now.
Yeah.
You have spiritual Israel, Joseph, because we're the northern kingdom coming in, being grafted in. We're scattered all over.
Right.
But it says that Joseph is a flame
Yes.
and Jacob is a fire. So could it be that we're finally going to do what Paul said about provoking them to jealousy? We'll be the flame that ignites that fire.
Absolutely. I
and
love it.
That fire is what's going to burn up the stubble because it's
they have
stubble.
to do it that way, right?
But remember, it's all in the same family. This is all God's people we're talking about.
Right.
We're not talking about, the Muslims from Iraq or ISIS. That's not who we're talking about here. That's a whole different battle.
Yeah.
We're talking about within the family. And I want to end with 21. It says, and saviors shall come to Mount Zion to judge the mountains of Esau, and the reign shall belong to Yahweh. Okay, this is the millennial kingdom. Because Yasha is the word for saviors, and it means to be saved. So basically, or to be delivered. So, and the delivered shall come to Mount Zion. That's the believers.
Yeah.
That's the ones who go to Isaiah 56
Yes.
and find out who that
yeah.
is. Who gets to come on the mountain of the Lord?
Yeah.
That is the those who are in covenant with him at the end, and they will possess Esau and his physical and spiritual territories. So then I see, oh, well, of course, that's the greatest and the least idea of the kingdom. You know, those who walk in it and teach it to others, those who walk in the commandments and teach others to do them are greatest, and those who do not are the least.
And that's the same idea, those who are outside the city and those who are inside the city in eternity. So
my opinion, I would say that those who break the commandments and teach others that it's okay to break the commandments is the spirit of Esau, the Edomites. Yeah. And those who do it and teach others to do it is the spirit of Jacob.
Yeah.
That would be the full family.
I would agree.
Well, you have anything else to add? Because that's all I have.
No, that's good.
I mean, Obadiah is very powerful book.
Yes, it is. It's short and sweet, like Jude.
Yes.
But all this
meat dinner. As I read it, just popping out here and there and everywhere. Anyway, yeah. All right. Well, that's all I have for you today. It was a good one. Yeah. We will see you next week with episode 75. That's a good one.
Yeah, we should have like some sort of celebration. Champagne or something.
We will have some fireworks.
Yeah.
Don't count on it. I'll have a sparkler. Yay, episode 75. All right. We hope you have a fantastic week. Shalom.